right, we're live.
Great.
So thank you so much for joining me today. I am joined by Ruth Morrison. And Ruth, we met on Lunchables, which shout out, not Lunchables, Lunch Club.
Lunch Club.
Yeah, Lunch Club. I keep calling it Lunchables. LinkedIn's Lunch Club, which I think is cool, is super cool. But anyways, so you're a writer and you work in animation and you also work in comedy and improv. So do you want to give, in your own words, a short little introduction of yourself?
Sure. I am a freelance animation writer, and I also write for puzzles. I write for Ask Me Another on NPR. And I have been an improviser for a long time. I came up through production and moved on to writing.
Right. Cool. And you cover, like I said, a lot of different industries like animation, writing. Would you say your writing is primarily animation? Have you done non-animation?
Have I done what?
Non-animated projects?
No, I have not written for live action professionally, only animated TV series.
Okay, interesting. And actually, before we go on, can you talk a little bit about the difference? Because I think animation is less familiar as an industry to people.
Yeah, sure. The differences between writing live action and animation?
Yeah.
Sure. So with they both have benefits and drawbacks, just in terms of how easy they are to write, I think, or things that you need to keep in consideration while writing. Yeah. I mean, animation is fantastic because you can have animals who talk, and you can have magic, and you can have characters go into space, and there's a lot more of a magical element to it that you can achieve through animation. Or you can have characters do like crazy stunts, and you don't have to pay a stunt person, for instance. So you can do all of these like crazy or magical or dangerous things in your writing. But that being said, when you get to the actual practicality of writing for animation, the thing that you need to keep in mind is that the world that you are writing doesn't exist yet. If you have a character wear a different costume, for instance, quote unquote costume, then that is so much more expensive than when you have a costume change for a real actor who's being filmed for live action. You have to remember that the world is being built, and you have to keep in mind how many things you can reuse. And that's true for live action as well. You want to reuse the set instead of building a new set every time. But for animation, it's especially important because animation is so expensive to produce. So that's why cartoon characters, traditionally wear the same outfit every single day. And it's like, do they just have a closet full of the same clothes? Like a lot of cartoons will make that joke where like the character opens their closet and it's just like all hangers of the same outfit every single day. But like there's a reason why they do that.
Yeah.
Oftentimes we'll write in maybe more sound effects because like if a character is like sighing or grunting, it's usually not an actor improvising that on the fly. They're in a booth, they're not recording with their fellow actors most of the time. There's some exceptions, like Bob's Burgers, they all record in a group, but most series don't. Yeah. So there can be, for comedic shows, there can be like a little less room for banter or for ad-libbing. That's not always the case, but it's just things to keep in. There are things you have to keep in the back of your head when you're writing for animation.
Got it. Cool. And now I know in the theater, so my background's theater, for theater writers, there's always this kind of balance between remembering the budget and not letting the budget inhibit your writing.
Yes.
Creative.
Totally.
Experience that too?
Yeah, absolutely. Most of the time, unless I know that there's a restriction in place that they want to be mindful of, like for instance, water is really tricky to animate. It's hard to show that effect. And if you have a character who gets wet, that's another, they have to design a whole new character. So usually I'll be mindful of things like that. But in terms of like action or effects or like just writing cool stuff into the script, I try not to limit myself on that. Because animation is all about movement. You like the characters want to move. You know, it's going to be really boring if you limit yourself, and it's just not going to make for a good show. So usually on that front, I'll go, you know, as big as I think is appropriate for the script, or, you know, I'll go as big as I want to, and then have the story editor or the head writer pull me back.
Okay, oh, cool. And you've always been drawn to comedy. So you've already mentioned it and mentioned that. So where has your attraction to comedy come from? Because I think that's probably another industry, right?
Yeah, I mean, I've always liked funny versus serious. Just as when I was a kid, I always watched cartoons.
Okay.
But when I got older, I always just was drawn to sitcoms. My dad raised me on a pretty healthy diet of Jewish comedic films growing up. So I watched a lot of Marx Brothers. I watched a lot of Mel Brooks.
Yeah.
So on the one hand, I was sort of raised by a funny guy. But on the other hand, that's just what I've always enjoyed the most. And I went to a summer camp when I was 12. It was like an arts day camp, and I learned improv for the first time when I was 12. And so I've always also been building my improv skills, you know, dating to when I was pretty young.
Cool. And you've done improv in the city at like places like the Pit. And so how active are you in the improv scene in the city?
Right now.
Yeah.
I mean, it's over the past year, not so much because I've been in LA.
Right.
Before that, I was in a Harry Potter themed improv show that we performed at the Pit, called The Heirs of Hogwarts. So that was like the main thing I was doing. And I also took classes at the Magnet Theater. I took classes at The Annoyance when they were around in Williamsburg. So yeah, I usually like to be involved. At the Magnet, I also did Moxie, which is their sketch writing lab. I try to keep involved. It kind of feels like going to the gym for me. It feels like I'm exercising my brain and I'm letting off steam and I'm building my skills because improv has informed the way that I write scripts.
Oh, fascinating. Talk about that. How would you say that?
So for the first time I wrote a script, it was really, really intimidating. And I was just kind of like staring at the blank page. Like, I think we've all had that feeling when we're about to start a new project where it's just like, oh God, the blank page is like staring into the void. But once I started writing the scene, I kind of remembered being in a scene, like a 2-person scene, in an improv setting. And it just wasn't that different. It was a character would say something that would be true to their desire or their point of view, and the other character would react, and it would volley back and forth. And then when it came time for me to create new characters, I remembered classes that I had taken where we talked about character building, where it's really just if you take a couple of traits and you put them together in this sort of amorphous person that you're creating, then they have all of these, in improv we call them gifts. You're giving them gifts to operate, and so it was really like saying the words that I would in an improv scene, except instead of saying them, I was writing them down.
Right. Oh, fascinating. Cool. And you said you were just in LA, and were you doing any improv there?
No, I did a sketch class at UCB. That was my first UCB class.
Oh, cool. In LA, right?
In LA, yeah.
Okay, got it.
I wasn't doing a whole lot of improv. The problem with improv a lot of the time is that to get in with like an improv theater, you have to pay for their classes.
Right.
And I had just gone through all the way up to the conservatory program at the Magnet, and I really didn't want to start over, especially when I was, in a new place and not totally sure where my next project was going to come from.
Got it. Yeah, that makes sense. And so now you consider yourself kind of bicoastal?
Yeah, kind of bicoastal. Yeah, I got in a room in an apartment in LA that I'm paying for and not living in.
Mhm.
I'm back here in New York for the quarantine.
Yay! Yeah.
And so I think my ultimate goal is to live in New York and go back to LA as needed. But it's hard because that's where everything is. That's where everyone, for the most part, who's involved with the major productions is based.
In animation.
Yeah, in animation and in a lot of entertainment. New York, there's obviously some
You're
more.
talking to a New Yorker who's very proud of the art scene in New York. So
I'm not talking arts though. I'm talking films like
that's art.
yeah. But like you know what I mean though. There's more. There's just more in LA.
Definitely for film, I think, right? And well, on television, actually, there's not a lot of television in New York, right?
That's what I'm saying.
Okay, yeah. That's fair.
Like,
and actually, I don't know any animation here.
There's very, very little animation that is actually produced here.
Right. Yeah, that's kind of upsetting. Well, I say we just need to change that.
I think so too.
Right.
But the trend is that it's been shrinking. There used to be more.
Oh, really? So why is that?
I don't know.
They're just going out to LA, or they're just disappearing altogether.
I mean, I think the like, I don't know because I got to New York. I've been in New York for about 7 years, and so I got here just as things were like already pretty dried up.
Oh.
So like, and for instance, Nickelodeon does have a big office here. The Viacom building in Times Square. You know, it's here, but most of their production does not happen here. Most of it happens in their Burbank studio.
Right. They just have this outpost. Yeah. Well, that makes sense. Interesting. So, now, wait, where'd you come? Just out of curiosity, where were you coming from? You said you New York for 7 years.
Chicago.
Chicago. Oh, nice. Oh, I didn't know that. I lived in Chicago for a year, so I know Chicago as well. I love Chicago.
Me too. I miss it a lot, but there's even less over there.
Yeah, true. And I do not miss the weather though.
Oh God, yeah, that was brutal.
Yeah, but that city definitely knows how to celebrate holidays, right?
Yeah.
Like they dyed a river. But anyways, so what would you say about, and you know this is one of my favorite topics, the differences between LA and New York in the entertainment, well, not just entertainment, I guess arts industries, but it is entertainment.
Yeah. So New York, in terms of art in general, New York and LA are both really rich in artistic scenes.
Yeah.
I have not found a shortage of art in either place. Both of them, I've met really phenomenal visual artists and musicians and theater artists and writers. Like both are art hubs for sure.
Yeah.
In terms of industry stuff, like strictly entertainment, film, and TV, LA, I have found, has been more like when I talk to people and I tell them what I do, people in LA understand what I mean right away. If I say I'm an
animation.
What's that?
Because of the animation part, would you say?
Yeah, because when I say I'm an animation writer, people in New York and other places are not totally sure what I mean by that. And people in LA just get it. They go, oh, okay, cool. I've got a friend who works over at DreamWorks.
Yeah. Oh, wow. Okay, yeah, that's nice.
They just understand what I do a little more. And when I say I work from home or that I'm a freelancer, like it's way easier to meet up with people in the middle of the day because there's just that culture of like coffee meetings. Meetings are huge. Everybody meets with everybody. Especially in animation when people are so friendly. There's, I think, a little bit less overt gatekeeping. Whereas in New York,
you think there's less in LA?
I think there's less in LA because I think because there's just more opportunity. I think it's possible that people don't feel as threatened by other people. Whereas in New York, at least in my experience, I've experienced a lot of people who are like, oh, well, you know, like this person's new, they don't know what they're doing, they're not, you know, like, how dare they speak to me? Like that, no one says that, but that's kind of like the undertone of that. And in LA, you know, because it's more of a lucrative business, and you know, the higher ups really need to be meeting with new creators and new artists and new writers. It's less, I think it's a little less snooty. That's just been my experience.
Right. Yeah, no, that's actually really nice and refreshing, because I think in the theater industry, in the film, well, maybe actually in the theater industry, but certainly in music too, and maybe live action outside of animation, it feels like it's all about who you know.
Yes.
Who your agent is or whatever. And then I found in my experience with LA is that everyone was very nice and willing to give me the time, but it didn't mean anything.
That's totally true.
And you know, like maybe I have a connection, so then they're, you know, or whatever, and so they're so nice and so willing to open up, but it's just not going anywhere. And one of the things I love about New York is that if it's not going anywhere, you're going to know right away.
Yeah, totally.
And part of that is New York personality.
I think I have not really like been in LA long enough to know whether or not some things are going anywhere. Like I have met with people who have put me up for jobs. I have, you know, there have been some things that have worked in my favor in LA. And then there are other times when I have met, I've met with people and I send them my, my writing samples, and you know, and I don't know if it's sitting in the file. I don't know if they've read them. I don't know if they're gonna, but they might. That's the whole thing, is they might.
Yeah.
And it's also about building those relationships.
Right, which I totally agree. This is so good for me, because I totally agree with you. But I just feel like there's definitely a time where it's like it's been might for like 2 years now.
Yeah.
You know what I mean? So, but I hear you, and I appreciate the kind of. It does sound like a very niche industry, a little bit, animation, anyways. And from everything you've said, it sounds really friendly and open, which I maybe less so in New York, but that's okay. I can understand why, because it's smaller here, like you're saying.
Yeah, and I will say that it really is all about relationships, building those relationships and keeping them.
That's true.
And I have an example of that where I used to work at Frederator here in New York. They have a New York office and an LA office, and you know, just like New York, or just like Nickelodeon, New York is where they do like a lot of the YouTube stuff and their management and their like, you know, and their licensing. And then LA is where the actual productions get made, the actual cartoons. And so, I was laid off from Frederator in 2015. But I kept in touch with them, and now I'm out in LA and I'm meeting with one of their heads of development, who is my former intern. And
nice.
you know, I'm going to be pitching her something that I'm creating with my other former intern. And we're going to be pitching to Cartoon Network, where I've been talking to the development execs there, where, you know, I sent them my scripts, and it's doubtful that I'll get hired, but at least I've already established that connection, which is which moves in my favor. Absolutely. So it's not always about getting something out of meeting people. It's about establishing a connection, so that when you have something that fits with what they're looking for, you have a better chance of making that happen.
Agreed, and well put, actually. And I think that's exactly the right mindset to get a lot out of it. And it sounds like you're actually doing really good with it. So, or you're finding success. So that's good. I also noticed that you got your degree in psychology, which I think is so great for a writer.
Yeah.
Right? You find that really helped you with your writing?
Yeah, I mean, so I never intended to be a writer. That was never the plan. I was first going to be a psychologist. That was the original plan. And then my senior year of college, so I was doing a lot of theater, I was doing a lot of improv, and I got thrust into the role of producer.
Right.
Yeah. Skidmore College does a national college comedy festival every year. And I was chosen unbeknownst to me. And so I was just sort of told like, hey, you're doing this now. And I got really into it. And so I was starting to realize that entertainment could be an option for a career.
That's cool. That's, again, so refreshing, because I hear more stories of artists being, the artists who start out wanting to pursue their art and then their dreams getting crushed by the reality of either parents saying, no, you have to get a real job, or. No,
it was totally the other way around for me.
Cool.
Yeah, I was the one crushing my own dreams. And
with psychology.
Yeah, I mean, I still think I loved getting a psychology degree. I actually really enjoyed learning about psychology, and I still really enjoy it. Yeah. But I didn't want to be in school for 10 more years, which is a big part of getting your PhD, is being in school and for a long, long time, and then doing residencies and getting certifications, and it was just too much for me to like even fathom. Not to mention the cost of grad school. But so I figured, okay, well, I've been doing production. That could be a way for me to get into, to doing more like TV and more comedy stuff. And for me, it was either going to be comedy, like live action comedy, or cartoons. And the cartoons just worked out first.
Yeah, cool. Probably, I would say, maybe because it's a niche, it's more niche. So it's a little bit more accessible, like you're saying, which is cool. And it's also cool, I think, that you got your start in kind of production, on the production side, and you've kind of produced some things yourself. Do you find those skills of kind of knowing the other side helpful to your writing career?
Yeah, I think so. I think I'm more of a well-rounded candidate. I understand how animation is produced, so I can write for it a little bit more effectively, and I think probably receive fewer notes on my work. But it is kind of a different skill set. I approach them differently. I think I can sort of like bust through some production stuff, whereas writing always takes longer than I think I'm going to, or than I think it's going to.
Cool. And then, of course, the big question here towards the end, but is how do you think this pandemic is affecting the industries that you know the best, which is animation, writing, if you call that an industry, and, well, yeah, animation, writing, but animation is the industry, right? Yeah, and also comedy and all that. So how do you see things changing?
So with animation, it is actually, in terms of like all of the entertainment industry, it's one of the areas that is best suited to everyone working from home. I think, in terms of all collaborative art, it's so much better when you're all in the room together, or when people have access to each other, but it can be done at home. Artists, they have their tablets at home and they can access files through a VPN. Right, I've been working from home this whole time, so for me, not much has changed. Cool. And people can even record from home. It's tricky because like the sound quality might differ if from person to person in their home studios, but it can be done. Whereas with live action, it's just halted.
Yeah, totally. That's positive. And now what about content and what's happening on the content side? Like you mentioned that story about trolls.
Oh yeah. So the distribution has been kind of wonky. So I had told you earlier that the Trolls movie, for instance, is being released straight to video, which is all well and good, but then Universal announced that they were going to start releasing more films simultaneously in theaters and straight to video, and AMC freaked and announced that they were no longer going to be screening any movies by Universal should this actually take effect.
Right. Even though they said that they were still going to do the others as well, right?
Right. Right. But it takes away, if for me, for instance, as someone who doesn't love going to the movies,
right?
And I don't want to pay $18 for a ticket and $15 for popcorn and whatever they charge,
right?
I will take the home video option every time. My partner, on the other hand, loves going to the movies, but it's going to kind of cut that audience in half.
Yeah, totally. And it's interesting that AMC has made such a strong root in the ground, which a statement on it, completely dropping them, because in my mind, that's what makes it relatable to Blockbuster.
Yeah.
Because the thing with Blockbuster was that they refused to even consider streaming, you know, and they made such a big deal about it that then obviously they went belly up. So the big question is, that's like maybe impossible to answer, but do you think, you know, theater distributors like AMC are going to go the way of Blockbuster after all this?
Maybe. I'm really, really bad at predicting this stuff. I never thought that Blockbuster would go under.
Right.
But
it's a shift for sure.
I mean, I think that people are going to always take the easier option, like the way, like how fast can the content get to my eyeballs?
Right. Well, that's true.
Yeah.
Especially in the cell phone generations, you know, where they're growing up with everything at their fingertips, kids.
Right.
So yeah, you're right. I mean, who knows though? I mean, I do also think it's the same thing with live theater. In live theater, they've been saying for years, you know, that if we started streaming, we're going to lose people coming to the theater. And that was not the case. They started live streaming and it did not affect in a harmful way the attendance of theater. So I do think there's a place to be, there's a place in our culture for live, or it's not live, I guess, going to the movies, but going to the movies for that, even that. But I think that it may look different. And I mean,
well, for theater, if I have to choose between watching something streamed and going to the theater, I'll pick go to the theater every time.
Yeah, that's true, because it's live, I guess.
Because it's live, and because like the quality is not going to be as good, and you're not going to get like the feels in the room, and I know that's what a lot of people like about them going to the movies as well. That the big screen and you're watching it with all the people, and you've got, you know, that electricity in the room. But I think in terms of theater, that's just like amplified 10 times.
Yeah, well, that could be interesting, because the webinar or I don't know what you call these things, a meeting, I guess. The other day, a theater group was talking about the future of theater, and somebody said drive-in theater.
Oh,
wouldn't that be cool?
That would be cool, kind of like Shakespeare in the Park, but in your car.
Yes.
I'm there for that.
Exactly, and like we'll bring back the telescopes.
Yes.
But you know, or VR too. I know a lot of VR guys insist that VR is the future of theater. You know, so who knows? But I do think there's ways there. But and just to go back to AMC, I think if they stay open to, you know, different kind of ideas, like maybe, for instance, AMC gets into the theater business. You know, who knows? But yeah, I do think there's a way, because there's always another way.
There's always another way.
Right, exactly.
And I've been seeing a lot of that with improv right now. I just took a virtual improv class with the Magnet. They're streaming like stay-at-home performances over Twitch, where, you know, where like the improvisers of the same team will just be like doing video conferencing and people can watch. So they're finding another way, but they're really struggling. So I would say if anyone out there watching has money to donate to the arts, the Magnet Theater in New York City is a really worthy cause.
Nice, the Magnet. And if you can give me the link specifically for donating, if there is one, I can also look it up. I will post it in the comments section for this video.
Yes, I will send you their virtual Pass the Hat link.
Perfect. Oh, that's nice. Okay, cool. Okay, so we're just about out of time, but I really wanted to touch on, before we finish things up, this new series new animated series on Netflix called The Midnight Gospel.
Yes.
I've only seen one episode, but I'm so enthralled with it because I've never seen anything like it. It seems, I don't even know what genre it is. It's like an animated podcast.
Yeah, that's a really good way to put it.
Yeah, but it's got a story. Like the storyline that they put into the podcast, like there's a podcast storyline and then there's the animated storyline.
Yeah.
So there's like two storylines in one. It's such a trip. What do you think? What are your thoughts?
So I've only watched 2 episodes. I plan on watching all 8. One of my friends told me that the 8th episode actually made him like cry real tears.
I've heard that.
Yeah. I'm really here for it. It's not the genre that in terms of like the animated style, it's not what I usually gravitate towards. I don't usually go to like the super gross out, but Pendleton Ward has such such a history of creating innovative animation and stories that no one has really told before in that way. And so, I mean, I think that anything that he puts out, I'm going to watch.
Nice. Okay. Yeah. I'm really looking forward to finishing the series. So awesome. Thank you so much for joining me today, because I think you're a perfect example of an artist who's really doing things kind of another way in your own way. And you seem to be staying true to, your passions and everything, and staying positive. Yeah. And I'm so glad that it's a positive story coming out of LA, because I've heard way too many negative ones. Do you have any kind of final words you'd like to leave us with?
Just that if there's something that artistic that you want to try and don't think that you can do it, you never know until you're actually in the process of doing it. So I would say give yourself the benefit of the doubt. Just try whatever you want to do, and it might lead you down a really interesting creative path.
Word. Awesome. Thank you so much, Ruth.
Thank you for having me.